The rain had been pouring for hours, tapping steadily against the roof in a soothing rhythm. The air felt heavy with moisture, carrying the earthy smell of wet soil, while distant streetlights flickered in the downpour. Just as I was about to close my window, I caught sight of her, hunched and shivering, a thin figure barely visible in the glow of my porch light. A stray cat, soaked to the skin, her fur matted against her frail body. Raindrops hung from her whiskers as she looked up at me, her big, pleading eyes conveying a sense of desperation. For a moment, I paused. This wasn't something I had planned for. Yet, seeing her so small and vulnerable stirred something within me. I quickly grabbed an old towel and opened the door enough to lay it down. With a tentative step forward, she approached, a mix of caution and trust in her movements. I thought I was simply offering her shelter for one night, not realizing she would return a week later, with her kittens. When she stepped inside, her fragility became even more apparent. Her once dusty gray fur was dark from the rain, clinging to her ribs in uneven patches. Water dripped from her tail, creating small puddles on the wooden floor. Instead of running away, she stood still, tired and blinking at me, as though weighing her decision. I crouched down, moving slowly to avoid startling her. "You must be so cold," I said softly, placing the towel close by. She sniffed it with caution before stepping onto it and kneading it gently with her weary paws. I could see her shoulders relax just a bit. I stepped back, giving her the space to decide what to do next. After a short pause, she seemed to surrender and curled up on the towel, her shivers gradually fading. Sitting down on the floor, I watched her, wondering where she had come from and if she had ever known a home. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind rattling the windows. Inside, there was only silence. I noticed she must have been hungry, yet when I set a small plate of leftover fish nearby, she didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes, choosing rest over food. That night, I left the door slightly ajar, uncertain if she would stay. By morning, she was gone. I assumed that was the end of it, but I was mistaken. A week later, I heard a faint sound, soft, almost like a delicate cry, as if something fragile was searching for comfort. Half asleep, I almost dismissed the sound as nothing more than the restless wind slipping through the cracks of my door. But then, it came again, quieter this time, like a soft whisper at the break of dawn. That faint sound stirred something within me, pulling me from the last remnants of sleep. And before I had a chance to think, my feet began moving toward the door. As I opened it, a rush of cool morning air greeted me, bringing with it the scent of damp earth and the lingering traces of last night's rain. And then I saw her, Hannah. She stood just outside, her thin frame still showing the signs of a hard life, but something about her felt different now. She wasn't alone. At her feet, nestled against the wooden porch, were three tiny figures, kittens, no more than a week old, their fur still damp from the morning mist. They huddled together, their little limbs shaking as they sought warmth, their unopened eyes searching blindly for the mother who had brought them here. For a moment, neither of us moved. Hannah's green eyes met mine, her expression hard to read. She stood poised in a strange balance between exhaustion and determination, and it didn't feel like the desperate plea I had seen before. This was something steadier, as if she had already reached a decision long before she arrived at my doorstep. She had brought them here for me, presenting a choice and a question, an unspoken offer of trust. Kneeling down, I hesitated for a moment, my breath catching as I reached out to the trembling little bodies. They were heartbreakingly small, their tiny paws twitching, their fur matted from the journey. One was pale gray, instinctively curling into itself. Another was golden, its tiny head lifting in a slow, aimless search. And the third was dark as night, breathing in quiet, uneven puffs. To my surprise, they didn't shrink away as I brushed my fingers against them. They didn't flinch as I gently scooped them into my hands. Hannah observed me, her tail flicking once before she stepped forward, pressing her damp nose to my wrist as if to seal an unspoken agreement. I had no idea how to care for a mother and her newborns, or what this moment meant for either of us. Yet, as I carried them inside, feeling the warmth of their tiny bodies against my skin, one truth became clear. Neither of us had planned for this, but somehow, this moment had found us both. In the days that followed, life settled into a quiet pattern filled with unspoken worries and careful adjustments. The kittens, still unable to see, nestled closely against their mother. Their tiny breaths created a soft rhythm, rising and falling in a gentle dance. Hana, despite her exhaustion, wrapped her body protectively around them, creating a warm shield. I stayed at a distance, wanting to respect their bond, but also drawn in. Each moment felt significant, every twitch of their ears, every small stretch of their legs, and each glance from Hana, as if she were trying to gauge my understanding of this new responsibility. Then, without warning, an unsettling change swept over the scene. That morning, as I set down a bowl of food near Hana, I noticed a troubling stillness among the kittens. Yuki, the smallest, wasn't moving. A heavy feeling settled in my stomach as I gently touched her fur. She felt warm, but not quite right. Usually lively, her tiny body was now eerily still. Hana gave a low murmur, nudging Yuki with her nose, but there was no reaction. Panic began to swell inside me, filling the space where I felt vulnerable and unsure. Just when I had begun to accept my role in their care, I was suddenly confronted with the harsh possibility of loss. Time seemed to stretch in that moment, a heavy weight pressing against my chest. Yuki lay small and silent next to Hana, while her siblings continued to squirm in their sleep, oblivious to the struggle unfolding nearby. Hana, guided by her instincts, continued to nudge Yuki, emitting a low, worried sound. It was different from anything I had heard from her before, neither a demand nor a simple cry, but something far deeper, a cry of desperation that resonated with a sense of loss that I could hardly comprehend. I found myself hesitating, my fingers just above Yuki, caught between the fear of touching her and the dread of confirming my worst fears. I felt a rush of worry. Was she unwell? Too fragile? Had I made a mistake? It was a situation I had never faced before, and I knew I had to act quickly. Gently, I took her in my hands, sensing the faint rise and fall of her tiny chest. She was alive, but just barely. A wave of helplessness washed over me, and I realized this felt new and unsettling. My first thought was to head straight to the vet, to get this delicate life into capable hands. But then I saw Hana. She was watching me closely, her ears back and her body tense, trying to gauge if I was worthy of this trust. At that moment, I understood this choice wasn't mine alone. It was a shared decision. As time ticked by, each second felt elongated, almost fragile, as I held Yuki's light frame. Her breathing was irregular and weak. I could barely feel it against my skin. Hana's gaze on me was intense. She was ready to spring into action, caught between instinct and the need to trust. Meanwhile, the other two kittens remained blissfully unaware, wrapped in their own peaceful world. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress my rising panic and think clearly. I needed assistance. I quickly assessed my options. Was there a vet nearby who could help? But would they even take in a stray kitten with no history or mother to advocate for her? What if whatever was making Yuki weak was already too severe to treat? Doubts began to creep in, suggesting that I wasn't cut out for this, that I had no right to try and save her when I was so inexperienced. Just then, a swift knock at the door snapped me back to reality. The sound broke the heavy silence in the room, and I carefully shifted Yuki into a soft blanket-lined box. When I opened the door, I saw Ayumi, my neighbor, standing in the misty morning light. Her eyes quickly darted to my hands and then past me to where Hana rested with her remaining kittens. A frown formed on her face. "You need help," she said firmly. "Tell me everything." In that moment, the burden I had been shouldering was no longer mine alone. Ayumi walked in confidently, blending into the room, just like the soft morning light streaming through the rain-smeared window. She knelt next to the makeshift bed where Hana and her kittens rested, her hands gently brushing over the blanket as she examined Yuki's tiny form with a focused urgency. I had always seen her as someone who spoke little but understood a lot, her calm presence guiding you without any pressure, leading you toward thoughts you hadn't considered. When she turned to me with a look that was both serious and searching, I found myself unsure if I really wanted to hear her thoughts. "She's weak," Ayumi said softly, cradling Yuki's delicate body with her gentle touch. "She might not survive." Her words hit me like a heavy weight, settling uncomfortably in my chest. I noticed Hana shifting restlessly, her ears twitching toward us, and her tail tightly wrapped around her remaining kittens. There was no panic in her demeanor, just the quiet patience of a mother who had endured too much to entertain doubts. I gulped, my voice barely above a whisper. What do we do? Ayumi exhaled slowly, shaking her head a bit. That depends. How much are you willing to fight for her? In that moment, it became clear that this was not only about Yuki. It was about all of them, and it was about me. The question hung in the air, feeling heavier than the humidity pressing against the walls. How much am I willing to fight for her? I didn't have an answer, not yet, but the weight of that question pushed against something deep and uncertain within me. I wasn't just deciding Yuki's future. I was stepping into a situation much bigger than I had ever prepared for. Ayumi didn't wait for my reply. She was already moving, her hands steady as she adjusted the blanket around Yuki's fragile body, her eyes carefully scanning the dim room as though she were assessing every detail. She's cold, too cold, she said softly. Newborns can't control their body heat. If we don't warm her up, she won't make it to the vet. Hana stirred at the sound of our conversation, her sharp green eyes alert and watchful, her ears drawing back as she let out a low, uncertain hum. She had trusted me enough to bring her kittens here, but as I reached for the little one she had brought into my life, I could feel the invisible bond between us tightening, caught between understanding and instinct. A sudden yowl cut through the calm morning air, sharp and unsettling. Hana's ears pinned back as she tensed, her body instinctively coiling with alarm. Ayumi and I stood frozen. The noise echoed again, now closer, winding through the mist like an urgent message. There was an unknown presence outside. Someone or something was watching us. Inside the room, the atmosphere shifted. It felt thick and electric, as if something was building just beneath the surface. Hana was no longer the tired mother watching over her young. She was alert now, her muscles tight, eyes fixed on the door with a focus that sent a shiver down my spine. The unsettling sound had faded, but its memory lingered, filling the quiet space with an unspoken warning. I exchanged a worried look with Ayumi, who had risen cautiously, her expression serious. She was listening intently, as we all do when we sense we are not alone. My heart raced, and while I was on edge, my attention kept drifting back to Yuki, the fragile warmth cradled in my hands. She was still alive, but her breathing was weak and uneven. Whatever was happening outside felt less important than keeping her safe in this moment. Then, Hana moved. She rose gracefully, navigating around her remaining kittens. Her tail was low and she moved quietly, eyes fixed on the door as if aware of some unseen threat. A cold shiver ran through me. Ayumi took a careful step forward, speaking in a low voice. "Someone left her out there once," she said quietly. "What if they've come back?" Those words flickered unease within me. I thought I was rescuing her, giving her a safe place when she had nowhere else to go. But what if my actions had interfered with something that was never meant to change? Another yowl rang out, even closer, pressing against the thin walls of our shelter. The kittens rustled, instinctively seeking the warmth of their blankets. Neither Hana nor I moved. Something was waiting just outside. The silence that followed felt dense, heavy with anticipation, like the air before a storm. Hana remained perfectly still, every muscle in her body tense, her tail flicking low as she focused intently on the door. The kittens nearby stirred slightly, snuggling together under the blankets for warmth, completely unaware of the quiet tension hanging in the air. I felt the fragile weight of Yuki in my hands, her faint breaths a reminder that time was slipping away slowly, painfully. Ayumi stepped closer to the door, her fingers hovering over the handle. She hesitated, her brow furrowed in thought. She typically didn't rush to decisions or let fear take control. Yet something about this moment, the eerie stillness outside, Hana's heightened alertness, made her pause. That hesitation made my skin crawl. Then came another noise. Unlike the unsettling yowl we had heard before, this was softer, more immediate, a rustling sound, footsteps shifting on the ground. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. What if it's just another stray? I whispered, doubting my own words as I spoke them. Deep down I felt something wasn't right. Stray cats didn't linger in silence, waiting at doors. Ayumi let out a controlled breath, then swiftly unlocked the door and opened it wide. The morning mist rolled inside, curling in the dim light, and just outside the threshold stood a cat, but not an ordinary one. This cat was larger than Hana, with a patchy coat marked by scars and age, its yellow eyes sharp and intense, locking onto Hana's with a recognition that felt significant. Hana froze. She knew him. In that moment, this was more than just my concern, or Ayumi's, or the struggle of the kittens inside my home. This was about Hana's past, a past she had never shared, now unexpectedly returning. For a brief moment, everything felt suspended. The connection between Hana and the scarred tomcat filled the space, thick with an unspoken understanding. She stood there, her body tense yet still, her tail held firmly, ears partially pinned, an expression not of fear or surrender, but perhaps resignation. It was as if she had anticipated this moment, as if she knew he would eventually seek her out. The tomcat didn't move, didn't blink. His golden eyes were fixed on Hana, sharp and intense in a way that made me catch my breath. This was no chance encounter. He had come specifically for her. Ayumi stood beside me, her fingers twitching slightly as she instinctively moved to shield me. "This isn't random," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. "They know each other." Hana seemed to tremble, not from fear, but from an inner struggle. She took a small step forward, then hesitated, her tail curling tightly. The tomcat emitted a deep, rumbling sound, neither a growl nor quite a meow, more like a question wrapped in authority. In that moment, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I had never seen Hana hesitate before. She often held herself cautiously, but this was different. It was uncertainty. Yuki stirred in my hands, her breath fragile and fading, and I swallowed hard. "Hana," I managed to say, my voice a mere whisper. "Is this your mate?" She turned to me, her expression unreadable, yet I could sense something complex brewing within her. She didn't need to respond. It was clear enough. The tomcat stepped forward, crossing the threshold just enough for the mist to swirl around his paws. His gaze shifted to the kittens huddled behind Hana. In that moment, his tough demeanor softened. A heavy realization settled in my chest. He wasn't there for her. He was there for them. The air between them buzzed with something unspoken, a tension that wasn't expressed through angry sounds but through the quiet shifts of bodies poised and ready. Hana stood stiff but not scared. The tomcat, marked by battles of the past, carried himself with a calm assurance that sent chills down my spine. This wasn't some confrontation for control. It was something more profound, an expectation rather than a demand. And with that expectation came a truth that unsettled me. He wasn't here for her. He was here for them. That realization was like an anchor weighing me down. Had I misunderstood everything? Did I think I was protecting Hana when I had actually taken her away from something she was meant to keep? The way she stood there, frozen and calculating, neither backing away nor stepping closer, sent a shiver through me. She was making a choice, and it was clearly a difficult one. Inside her, instincts were at odds, pulling her between the need to survive and a deeper, more ancient obligation that seemed ingrained in her very being. I wanted to step in, to reassure her that she didn't have to walk away, that she owed nothing to a past that had left her out in the rain. Yet, that same past stood right in front of her, unyielding and demanding. The tomcat's face was hard to read, but his posture communicated something powerful that tightened my throat. This wasn't a discussion. He had come to take back what he thought belonged to him, and in that moment, I felt a heavy uncertainty. I had no claim over what was rightfully his. Ayumi stood beside me, calm on the surface, but I sensed the tension simmering just beneath her stillness. She seemed to be waiting for me to take control, to make a choice that felt completely beyond my authority. The atmosphere around us felt thick, stretching thin as Hana flicked her tail slowly, a deliberate action that stirred unease deep within me. Then she took a step closer. My heart raced, and my breath caught in my throat. She was moving toward him, drawn by something I couldn't discern, something outside my understanding and control. For a fleeting moment, fear gripped me. Would she walk past me and into the fog where he waited? But just as swiftly she stopped. Her body turned slightly, her head lowered, and her nose brushed against her small, trembling kittens. It was a subtle shift, yet it marked a significant change. The tomcat didn't advance, but I noticed a glint in his golden eyes and a slight tremor in his scarred body as he observed her. A heavy silence enveloped us, and it dawned on me what was happening. This wasn't merely a choice, it was a test. A test of Hana's strength, her loyalty, and whether old connections could overshadow the instinct that had guided her to this moment. Ayumi inhaled beside me, her voice barely above a whisper, as though afraid to disrupt whatever delicate balance had formed between them. "Kaito," she breathed, urgency threading through her words. "She's making her choice." The tomcat remained still, and Hana lingered, caught between two lives, two pasts, and two possible futures. I stood there, my breath caught in my chest, waiting to see which choice she would make. The space between them was charged with an unspoken tension, a quiet standoff that wasn't about growling or posturing. Instead, it was in the slight movements of their bodies, both alert and poised. Hana stood still, showing no fear. The tomcat, marked by the battles of the past, carried himself with a calm confidence that sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the behavior of a stray looking to assert dominance. No, it felt more profound, a presence that didn't just demand respect, but expected it. In that understanding, I felt a sinking realization wash over me. He wasn't there for her, he was there for something greater, perhaps even for them together. This realization weighed heavily on me, making me question everything I thought I knew. Had I misread the situation entirely? Had I believed I was rescuing Hana when I had only pulled her away from a bond that shouldn't have been broken? Her stance, rigid, yet considering, neither retreating nor advancing, sent a chill through me. She was at a crossroads, torn between survival and a deeper, instinctual connection, something rooted in her very essence. I wanted to step in and comfort her, to tell her she didn't have to choose, that she owed nothing to a past that seemed to abandon her. But that past loomed before her, steady and unwavering. While the tomcat's face was hard to read, there was a presence in his posture that made it hard to swallow. This wasn't a matter of choice for him. He had come to reclaim what he felt was rightfully his. In that moment, I felt the unsettling realization that I had no authority over what belonged to whom. Ayumi stood beside me, calm, yet I could sense the tension just beneath her surface. She was waiting for me to make a move, anticipating a decision that felt too big for me to handle. The air felt thick and almost suffocating as I watched Hana flick her tail, a slow, thoughtful gesture that sent a wave of unease through me. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward. My heart raced as I realized she was moving toward him, pulled by an invisible force, something beyond my understanding and certainly beyond my control. For a brief moment, I thought she might walk away, stepping past me and into the fog where he waited. But then she paused, turning slightly. Her head dipped low, and her nose brushed against her small, trembling kittens. This movement was slight but meaningful, signaling a change in the air. The tomcat didn't budge, yet I noticed a flicker in his golden eyes and a subtle quiver in his scarred body as he observed her. A heavy silence filled the room, and I finally realized the significance of the moment. This was not merely a choice, it was a test. A test of Hana's strength, her loyalty, and whether old connections could pull her away from the instinct that had brought her here in the first place. Ayumi took a deep breath beside me, her voice barely a whisper, as if she feared breaking the delicate balance. "Kaito," she said, urgency lacing her words. "She's making her choice." The tomcat remained still, while Hana hung between two lives, two pasts, and two futures. I found myself holding my breath, waiting to see which path she would choose. The silence that followed felt rich with meaning. Hana stood at the threshold, her gaze lingering where the tomcat had disappeared into the mist. Behind her, the kittens huddled together, blissfully unaware of the weighty decision at play. Yet I felt the shift, the quiet finality of it all. I half expected her to hesitate, to look back one last time, to reconsider her choice. But she didn't. With the same quiet confidence that had guided her to my door that rainy night, she turned and stepped back inside. This wasn't a retreat or an act of resignation. It was a decision made on her own terms. She passed by me silently, settling next to her kittens, with a grace that felt sacred and timeless. Ayumi exhaled slowly, her voice filled with reverence. "She knew," she said softly. "She knew what she wanted." I nodded, speechless, still weighed down by the importance of what had just occurred. I once thought I had saved her, but as I observed Hana snuggling her young, her form wrapping protectively around them just as it had when she first arrived, I came to understand the truth. Hana had found her own way to freedom. I was merely someone watching this unfold. As I quietly closed the door, trapping the warmth of our home inside, I acknowledged an unexpected truth. Perhaps, in a small way, she had saved me too. Not every story resolves neatly. Some don't offer clear conclusions, nor do they provide all the answers we seek. But perhaps that's the beauty of it. Certain choices remain open to interpretation. They encourage reflection and serve as reminders that every creature, whether human or animal, is influenced by the decisions we make and those we leave unmade. Hannah chose her path. She wasn't saved. She determined where she wanted to be. And that realization may just represent the purest form of freedom for any of us. If this narrative resonated with you, if it stirred something inside you or prompted you to think about the unseen lives that brush past us daily, I invite you to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Share it with others who might appreciate it. Who knows? Maybe someone else will spot a stray cat in the rain and decide to open their door. After all, it often only takes a single moment to alter the course of everything.